Welcome to Aspen Affairs and ACRA's 2022 Election Forum Series. I'm Alycin Bektesh, Public Affairs Manager with ACRA. Joining me on the show today are the two candidates vying for the County Commissioner District 2 seat in the November 8th election, incumbent McNicholas Kury and challenger Erin Smiddy. Thank you both for taking the time to answer questions from the Aspen business community this evening.
Happy to be here.
And to clarify for the viewers, candidates must live in the district they are running in, but the entire electorate will be voting on each district's race. Ballots went in the mail today, October 17th, and are due on November 8th. This evening's forum will consist of questions submitted by ACRA's membership, directed to one or both candidates. I'll save time at the end of our discussion for additional comments from the candidates if there are issues they feel they were not able to touch on based on the questions posed to them. For those of you watching on GrassRoots TV, this program is also available for streaming on grassrootstv.org and aspenchamber.org. Let's get started. Erin, I will start with you. As you've been campaigning, have you had the opportunity to connect with business owners and Aspen's workforce? Are there issues that are rising to the top and some ideas you have as those conversations happen for addressing those issues?
Okay, yeah. So as I've been campaigning, I've been kind of going old school style, door to door. And some people I meet, some I just leave a pamphlet. If they're there, it's been really fun talking to people and meeting people that I've never met that have lived here a long time as well, and new people to town. So it's been really fun. I've learned, I work at Clark's Market in Snowmass, so I'm like right there in the workforce with Snowmass. And I've learned definitely that housing is like at everyone's forefront. Everyone, not everyone, but the workforce is very adamant that housing is clearly the leader of what we need to address right now. A lot of my friends, even though I'm coming up on 50, I have a lot of younger friends that have children. So daycare, I think, has become huge as well. I think in the county, I haven't come across as many business owners as, you know, a couple small restaurant and business owners that I don't know how much the county's enforcement is affecting them because most of them are in the city. But just hearing what they have to say about, you know, housing and the budget and, you know, why don't we have more money for these type items. So it's been really fun. It's getting back in touch with the community, and I really like it, especially Snowmass. Like, I know I don't want to beat down on Snowmass, but I grew up in Snowmass, and until I took the job back at Clark's Market, I feel like Snowmass is kind of our forgotten child in the county a little bit, but they are killing it with their employee housing up there. And they're, you know, it's such a cool community up there. So I think, you know, if I am elected, I would love to work more with Aspen and Snowmass's municipalities and see if together we can build some stuff and share our land and share our money and come to ideas together. Might be overly optimistic about getting along with other governments, but I think it's possible. So that's kind of the platform I'm running on and what I've learned from talking to my constituents.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks.
Housing and childcare, don't worry, we're going to be talking about both of those things quite a bit this evening. Kelly, childcare is important to our businesses. It's something we hear from our members a lot. It's an issue that you've taken on in your time as commissioner. What have you been working on? Is there impacts of the 4 years you've been in that businesses and parents of young children are already seeing? What's going on back behind the scenes there?
Sure. Yeah, childcare has been a very important issue for me ever since, even before I ran. It was one of the things that I had hoped to work on. As a mom to two young kids, I knew how hard it was to find available childcare. You know, we had to take our daughter to BOCC, even though my husband and I were both working in Aspen, because that is what was available when it was time for me to go back to work after maternity leave. So it's really a challenge, and it's really expensive. Mm-hmm. And, you know, so it's been something that has been close to my heart over the last 4 years, and I think we have made strides on childcare. You know, first off, one of the first things I did was to advocate for Pitkin County as one of the major employers to institute a paid parental leave program where mothers and fathers could take up to 12 weeks of paid leave for the birth or adoption of a child. And we are actually having more conversations related to expanding broader family leave, but that was something I really counted as a success. It does take stress off the system because then families are able to combine that 12 weeks with additional vacation that they may have saved up, or flexibility that they can create within their jobs, so that there's not so much pressure on the infant rooms that we have, which are very few. There's only 32 infant care slots in the whole county. And so being able to delay the start of that allows for some kids to age out into older rooms and those events to get placed. So there's some success there. You know, I really, in a recent conversation, I really liked this frame that was presented to me about childcare, that every childcare worker is a multiplier for the workforce, because that childcare worker is taking care of 10 kids or 20, allowing 20 parents to go to work. And I think that's just a crucial foundation for our community. And so I really have been advocating at our board to either, in the future, hopefully near future, as we consider a housing tax, to have a child care component to that as well, or some revenue source that we haven't fully fleshed out, and hopefully we'll build support for. But in the immediate term, we received millions of dollars of federal stimulus funds from the pandemic, and a lot of that money was really flexible. And I really advocated to have that money go towards industries that were hardest hit by the pandemic. And childcare was definitely one of those. People took their kids out, or they lost jobs and couldn't afford childcare anymore. And so I'm looking forward, we are dedicating that funding to be really flexible to the childcare programs in order to bolster their programs as they need, whether that is to hire new people, provide housing stipends, to provide some inflation relief. So we're getting ready to roll that out, and I'm really excited about it. So I think that that's kind of a direct, immediate support, and some long-term infrastructure that we're building, because we also now, we've never had any dedicated staff working on this, and so now we have a person who, I advocated that we hire, because if you're going to have priorities, you need people to work on these priorities at the county, and so part of that person's time is looking at how we can strengthen the affordability and availability of high-quality childcare.
Have you had any successes on the state level with any of the work you're doing?
Related to childcare?
Correct,
Yeah. I was a big proponent of the Universal Pre-K program that is going to be starting this next year. So that was a ballot measure that went to the voters to provide, pre-K to any 4-year-old whose family wants it. And it's not comprehensive. It's only about 10 hours a week, which will help. What it'll do is let us kind of weave together different funding sources to hopefully make it more affordable for families, and also more available for families, because there is a real dearth from here down to Rifle with childcare availability. So that's some of the stuff I've worked on there as well.
Thank you. I have a question for both of you. I'll start with Erin. We have heard from the business community that they're interested in public-private partnerships for housing, so they can offer that as a benefit to their employees. So helping the cost of buy-downs or development. Is that something that you would be open to if you were to be elected?
Absolutely. I don't see why not. Because a lot of the issue is funding for it and finding places to build. So I think it would be crazy not to let the private sector at least give their opinions, throw out some suggestions, some offers, some options. To flat out say no to that, I think would be insane. I think when it comes to housing at this point, any help we can get, anyone that wants to throw their hand in, landowners that want to consider giving land, any business that wants to jump in, I'm all for it. All hands on deck with the housing right now.
Thank you. Kelly, that same question to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's, partnerships in this way are a better option, I think, than some of the other options we sometimes hear. For example, businesses being able to have slots in the lottery for APSHA. I think that gets really tricky. So something like having a partnership together where the equity in the project is really clear, I think could be very advantageous. And we've had some success of that here. We don't have a lot of private developers, and so that is part of the challenge, but that does not preclude a private business from being one of the equity owners, even if they're not directly the developer. One of the ideas that I've sort of been tossing around that we've had success with at the county has been what we've done for our employee program. And what we do is partner with the employee in purchasing a free market unit where the employee comes up with a majority of the percentage of the purchase price and we come up with a smaller percent. Their appreciation is capped because the county is taking the risk on that investment. If it goes to sell on the free market, it could be a loss, it could be a gain. And so in the future when that gets sold, that's, the gains are earned by both parties. I think that that's something that really could be, piloted with the private sector because you could create programs where there is people purchase equity into it and it creates a pool of funding that then allows local workers to purchase on the free market or, which is the same as saying buy downs, right? So that's something that I think would be interesting to flesh out further and figure out what the business community's needs would be before they'd enter into something like that.
Can I add one thing to mine?
Certainly.
I think the Aspen School District right now is a solid example. They're a private sector in the fact that they're the school district, they're not the county, the city. And in my opinion, whoever they hired to take over their housing is killing it right now. They just bought the Aspen Edge. They have that fabulous housing in Snowmass. So it's a good example of if we let the private sector work with us for deed restriction and affordable housing, it is working, at least for the school district for now. It's not enough still.
Yeah, supported a bond for that. And
Yeah.
so I feel like the community would support any measure that the county could advance on trying to find more permanent revenue.
Well, let's sneak into that a little bit then, because as a vital issue to our workforce and to the employers, Erin, the city of Aspen went to the county commissioners asking them to put something on this upcoming election ballot to add a tax measure, countywide tax measure that would go to affordable housing. Your opponent, Kelly, supported that, but ultimately it didn't go this round. Is that something that you would be open to, adding a tax that would be dedicated to housing?
Yes. Kelly and I agree on a lot of this housing, and I know this sounds cheesy, but I do wish her and I could work together on the board because we agree on a lot of things, and I don't know if the rest of the board is quite aware of the dire need because maybe they own homes and it gets easier to become complacent. I have not met all of the board members in person, but there was one quote by one of them that said, "This is the city's problem." That shook me because it's not the city's problem because the city is in the county and it's all of our problem. And the county has a little more land and I think should be a lot more involved. So I applaud Kelly in the last 4 years for being one of the commissioners that's actually trying to do something about housing. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that they're reciprocating or listening as much as they should be or getting as deep into it as we should be. So I want to be that bloodhound that just attacks on the housing and I don't know how they'll receive that, but I'm hoping, through communication we can get a little further. But yeah, I would 100% be down for adding a tax. As a local voter, there's rarely a tax that enhances, like our medical services or our schools. Those kind of taxes I find that our communities almost always votes yes on because it is for the better of the community. So I would 100% support putting an aggressive tax on the next ballot.
Staying on that tax, Kelly, it's a property tax, presumably placed on local residents, people in APSHA, those who that could create a burden on those we're trying to support. So I guess what's the justification of having the people we're trying to help now pay for the thing that we're trying to achieve?
Sure. The board, we've not done the work to really hone in on what type of tax would be the best type of tax. There's a lot of opportunity, I think. You could do a lodging tax. One of the things I advocated for at the state level was that they expand the lodging tax beyond just paying for marketing. Sorry, ACRA, we took some of your money. But, to other purposes that would serve the community. So I think that there's a lot more vetting that would have to be done before we say it's one or the other. Sales taxes are very elastic. They depend on how well the economy is doing. They also can be regressive, so the people who have less means to pay have to pay more. So those are the kind of things I would be paying attention to. But figuring something out, is really important to me. And also I've been advocating at the state level to try and have our legislators legislature put a question to the voters about reinstating the opportunity for real estate transfer taxes, which we're precluded from doing. That's a very heavy lift. There's a lot of steps that have to fall into place for that to be a possibility, but you know, I'm looking at this from every possible angle, you know, and when you know, I worked with the rest of the board and really encouraged our staff to bring back to review for the board a look at our housing mitigation fee in the county. And so this is a fee that, you know, we charge when a project is shown to create employees by virtue of the size and use and whatever of the project. And, you know, the city has one, the county's had one for a long time. It hadn't been updated, and we were not making developers pay their full way. And I did not think that was right. So, you know, I really advocated that we brought this back. We were going to make sure that 100% of the fee was going to be paid for non-resident residential and above certain square footage, because we know that below a certain square footage, they're not generating employees. Above a certain square footage, they are. And, you know, I was really proud of that, because I think that that is a value that our community's had for a long time. So I don't know why we were only making them pay 60% and then really trying to rely on the county to absorb the rest, which we never did. So now we're making developers pay their full way, and I keep advocating, you know, we're collecting this money. We have a responsibility to deliver the housing that we are mitigating for. So that's some of the work that I've done on this.
Yep. And I think, like, that house on Willoughby Way last year that was valued, what, at $17 million, that sold for $72 million?
It's wild.
If they have $60 million extra, it's a little more tax. You know, and I don't mean that like us working locals, it will affect us, but a lot of our second homeowners, money is irrelevant in a sense that they want a home here so badly. My neighbor's house, he bought across the street free market for $5 million. A year and a half ago, he just sold for $14 million. So that kind of profit, you know, if we could take the taxes from that kind of profit in a year, $7 million extra on one property, that's huge. That's a lot of money. And we have a lot of money here, so I think if people want to live here, we have to pay to live here, and taxes are part of it.
Erin, you wrote in an editorial to the local papers that you know the struggle of looking for housing in Aspen, so I want to hear a little bit more about that part of your background and your current living situation.
So now I'm incredibly blessed. I can't remember back, but I think I was in the lottery for 6 to 7 years, you know, in my late 20s to early 30s. My friend, she was in the lottery for, I think, 9 years. I did win an awesome Category 1 to start out at the ABC about 15 years ago, and I was making little enough money to qualify for Category 1 at the time. And I was very lucky that I was able to purchase my mother's APSHA housing when she retired. So I am in APSHA now, but prior to that, I lived at Morale. I lived at the Brown House. I lived in an RV at the ABC back when there were a lot of parking lots. I lived in my brother's basement. I left to go to Denver. I gave up eventually about 25, and I came right back because cities scare me. And when I got home, it took forever to find housing again. And this is 15, 20 years ago. It was still that hard to secure housing. So I can't imagine now. I'm sad seeing people leave over and over. And it's a struggle because there are a lot of people living in housing that don't work anymore, but I don't feel like we have the right to kick them out because they're retired. So I think the only solution is to keep adding to the inventory. And I know a lot of, especially I've come across this on my walkabouts, is a lot of old locals seem the most resistant to building more. But I don't think they realize it's not going to be in their backyard, and it's going to be in, you know, places that are logical to the bus line, hopefully, and whatnot. So, yeah, I know so many people who still haven't won the lottery. My friend Stacy, she owns a business in town. She contributes to all the nonprofit animal events as a volunteer. The poor girl has bid on probably 200 properties, and she lives in one of the Centennials that's about to get torn down, and she has dogs. So it's a real reality. A small business owner giving back to the community is about to lose her home if she does not find something in the next year. So, yeah, the struggle is real. It's sitting on that lottery. I don't know if you sat on it before you won yours, but it's brutal. Sitting on that lottery and taking like 5th, 6th, 7th, and then you hope the people ahead of you can't make it, which is a terrible thing to hope for. So it's a brutal cycle, and I just want to try to do anything I can to improve that cycle. So.
one thing that's being addressed along those lines for those retirees, maybe people living in houses where there's less people than bedrooms, is a new right-sizing initiative where there's incentives to get the people into the size house that they're living in. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, is that something you would take up? Do the rooms that you have in your house get rented out to music students or the ski co pass? What are your personal feelings about trying to rearrange, I guess, the workforce into the one person per bedroom kind of system?
I like the idea. Unfortunately, you'll learn about me. I'm pretty honest. I don't think it's going to work because I don't think a lot of people are going to give up their homes. My parents live with me in the summers. I actually have one of the guys from Clark's Market that was going to have to leave town. We were going to lose one of our produce managers, so he's moving in. My goddaughter lived with me for a year and a half, so I do fill my rooms up with family and parents and friends. Never rented to music students or anything, but it's an option coming up. My rooms are still full with the large family I have, but it's a neat idea. But like I said, I can't see a ton of people downsizing unless there's some great options that present themselves to downsize too at the moment. So
Kelly, Erin's talking about adding to the inventory as a solution. I know on your website one of your issues is growth, and I think that's the headline, but I think ultimately lower growth, slower growth. Some of the, for example, you've given your examples that you voted against the Pandora ski run expansion. The new short-term rental licenses don't allow for someone who hasn't already been renting short-term rentals. So I'd like to learn a little bit more about your philosophy when you say growth and what you see for the future of Pitkin County.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, for me, I really think, Pitkin County has been a success story as far as protecting the rural character and the borders to our public lands, I think in a way that makes this place really extraordinarily special. And, that is something that I know that the county, constituents in the county also deeply care about. It's really interesting when you look at county surveys, the two big topics that come back are the need for affordable housing and the need to protect rural character. So these are tensions, but I think that we've done a good job balancing them. I think it's starting to feel out of balance, and in the out of balance in the sense of not protecting rural character enough.
Okay.
And I think that affordable housing is taking a lot of the criticism for what people are feeling because of what's happening in rural Pitkin County and the number of big houses that are being built, the size of the big houses that are being built, the lots that are being developed. So I really think that we should be doing more to pace and slow the pace of development, and also we're doing this whole work related to connecting our land use code to climate change. And so that to me is really meaningful work about how our residential built environment is contributing to the climate. So to me, they're very connected. So there's a lot of opportunity there, I think, to not build as big of homes, which is contributing, the biggest contributor to Pitkin County's climate, and also I think devolving our rural character. Now, when I think about affordable housing, there's opportunities within the urban growth boundary that I think we should really pursue, and we are starting to do some of that. I really kind of pushed our board to say, okay, where might we do projects? So we're talking to the Forest Service about the 8th Street curve and partnering there. We're looking at our Public Works master plan and seeing what kind of housing could be accommodated and built there. And again, I also think that there are no growth solutions that we should be pursuing. There's a new regional housing coalition that I've supported, and I'm looking forward to their work, that's committed to no build strategies. So things like buy downs, things like home buyer assistance, stuff like that. And so that's how I'm balancing the two. I think that we really have some non-negotiables as far as where we want to build. I want to see our open space really concentrated along the lands that abut our federal public lands. And I want to see the affordable housing concentrated in more dense areas along transit. And so that's how I balance those two. And, we have 8,000 commuters coming into Pitkin County every day. I don't think we're going to house all of them. I think there's a combination between housing people closer to work and moving people more expeditiously that are big problems we need to work on and solve. And I think I'm starting to take some of those steps.
So you're both getting my curiosity piqued, and I guess what that rural character means to you is that there is open space. Is that what you're saying, that preserving rural character means that we have these protected open spaces?
I think that we have protected open spaces, that we foster and cultivate local food production. I think that we reduce house size from 15,000 square feet because of what they're doing to the climate. Those are all things, and how they contribute to rural character. We have a lot of neighborhoods, our caucus areas in Pitkin County, who have self-selected to have a low minimum house size because that is the character that they want to preserve, is that feeling of smaller homes and larger ranch lands and things. So I support that, and I support us looking at it in more depth at the county for our entire land use code. And then there's things like cabins being developed on the back of Aspen Mountain that I would like to see stopped. Those to me don't contribute to, those are degrading rural character. And they're pushing development further and further into the backcountry, all of which is incremental growth that I don't think is serving our community well. There's going to be growth, and I think slow growth and community serving growth is what I would like to see. We don't have tools. We're never going to have enough money to buy out, all the lots that we might want to preserve from development, even if they're not preserved as open space, even if it's just, we just don't want to see development here. That we don't have all the tools to maybe do all the ideals, but I think we have a lot of tools that could be stronger that does keep this a really special place to live.
And then, Erin, what do you think of when you think of rural character, preserving that?
I'm a little different, whereas I do think we have some open space that could potentially be used for housing that's not intriguing to the local land developer. And I could be very wrong in if we can actually use that space. I've looked online a lot and tried to read through, which open space, what it is, if it's wetlands, if it's developable. The word I'm looking for doesn't exist, but I do think there are some places, and I don't, maybe out there by the Intercept lot, no one wants to develop a mansion out there. I agree that the size of the homes needs to go down a bit, but I think when we get out into the rural parts of Pitkin County, it's so much privately owned property at this point that I don't even know if there is much to develop anymore. And we're getting into tear downs and remodels at that point. But when I think of Pitkin County as a whole, and driving around so much lately, and when I was a deputy, everywhere, there's not a ton of available land even to the millionaires. Mm-hmm. So I think we're kind of backed into a little bit of a corner, but the corner we are backed into, we have a little bit of our own land that I would like to look into, maybe just using a little. I'm not talking massive production units. I'm, like a Snyder Ranch or an Annie Mitchell. Those are so well done. Or where I live, Williams Ranch. Even Burlingame is beautiful. It's too big for a lot of the small land we have, but I do see the no more growth. Everywhere is growing. Colorado is growing, and our county is, we're doing a great job at growing slower than the rest. Look at Summit County. It's so busy over there. In Denver, it's crazy. Even Steamboat's getting busy, and I feel like we're reaching our capacity as far as extension of growing. And like I said, I don't think there's a lot of private land left. So yeah, I want to look at some of the land the county owns.
Thank you.
And the Forest Service, like she said, and see what options are out there.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, what did you think when Erin said that it would be her wish that you weren't running against each other, that you could work together? What is that difference between maybe the people who live in District 2 and other county commissioners, that you guys are kind of, in a very similar lane, whereas the commission as a whole isn't doing unanimous decisions lately?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm not sure if it's tied to necessarily location.
Okay.
Yes, District 2 probably has the highest density of affordable housing than any other district in the county. I think that's probably true. But, you know, others have lived in and do live in affordable housing. So they're not divorced from, I think, the experience or the topic. You know, I do think it's really striking a balance between the tensions about growth that we're feeling and doing good housing projects. And one of the things that I keep advocating is, you know what? If we're not at the table, we have no input on whether a housing project that someone else is going to do is good or bad. You know, if we don't, the school district, the fire district, you know, they're all going to continue on and deliver housing while we are not partnering with them to help make projects, you know, good or better in our, you know, in the board's opinion, I would guess. So that's part of what I think is hopefully motivates us to get more involved. But, you know, I'm not sure. I think that there really has been just this feeling over the last 2 years of it's too much, there's too many people, there's too much development happening. And, you know, affordable housing is growth, you know, and some of that, I mean, sure, yeah, we might need additional bus shuttles to go through neighborhoods for affordable housing projects, but you know, our supermarkets serve 50,000 people on a peak day. Like I don't think our supermarkets are changing to serve an additional affordable housing development. We didn't get a new supermarket when Burlingame 2 was finished, right? Like it's just not, there's certain things that I hear that aren't coming to bear. And so there is a lot of education and along the process as well. So I think what's really missing from the county in this conversation has been direct advocacy from citizens. You know, it's like I think it would be great if Erin came and told her story to the board or brought people to tell their stories to the board because I'm not sure they're always hearing it. Okay. You know, they're not hearing it in their neighborhoods because they don't live there, right? Or they're not necessarily hearing it with the people that they know. So I think that would be meaningful. You know, that's something that I've realized that I need to do more of is really organizing a community campaign around this topic to bring to the commissioners to really hear it and see it and understand it. And, you know, and I hope that will motivate to find solutions. So that's what I'd like to do better in the next term.
This is kind of circulating around a question I have for both of you. Erin, I'll start with you. Okay. Just about who you see yourself representing. When you go to that table and it's time to make a vote, is it District 2, the voters of Pitkin County, the users of Pitkin County? When you go and make these votes, you know, just as Kelly's saying, you know, maybe you're not hearing from anyone, but you're hearing from your neighbor. Who are you voting for when you get up there?
So primarily, I want to represent the people like me, the people who don't come from trust funds, the people who do work underpaid jobs, perhaps, or several jobs to make it work. You know, I want to represent the kind of the middle class, younger version of Aspen, because they're not, I don't think, being represented properly right now. I don't think that the board as a whole is really taking in that we've got this entire younger generation that is struggling right now, and we're going to lose them. Picture Aspen in 10 or 15 years if we don't have a slightly more solid youth base in this town. It's going to be a little bit, it's Jurassic, you know, it's going to be different. And I don't think adding inventory to APSHA is necessarily adding growth, because most of those people are here. I've said it before, the 300 people at Centennial are going to need somewhere to go, and that's not adding to the growth, per se, of our population. It's adding to, you know, a couple more people on the RAFTA bus, a few more cars on the highway for sure. But I do think I'm confused by this current board. I am a little confused. Until it was brought up this year about housing, it was, and if it had not been brought up, I wonder why or when it was going to become a big issue. And I'm not trying to, you know, disrespect or say anything negative about anyone on the board. I just think eyes need to be opened a little bit more to the direness of this need. And I can be persuasive. I can fight hard. I joined a fire department of 40 men when I was 30 years old, and I fought, you know, my way up there for equality and to be respected like them, and it worked, and I got there, and that's what I want to try to do with the board, you know, just persuade them better, maybe have a stronger argument. I don't know. Just do something to try to convince them how incredibly desperate this situation has gotten. And I do want to represent the old locals too, that have their homes and are situated here. They're just a little harder to represent because I can't ignore what the county needs right now.
Yeah, and the businesses along those lines.
I mean, we are so understaffed at work. It's brutal. My poor manager is working 14-hour days, 6 days a week, and it's brutal. And there's not like, oh, don't worry, we'll get people this winter. The ski bums will come. They're not coming. The J1s are trying to come. They have nowhere to live. So it's brutally dire.
Thank you.
Can't stress that enough.
Kelly, I have that same question. Who are you voting? Who are you representing when you take a vote?
Sure. I'm representing all the people who've elected me, and I'm representing some of the tensions in these issues, I think. And for example, like Phillips is I think a illustration of some of these tensions.
Phillips
right?
Trailer Park.
Phillips, mobile home park that the county bought right before I joined, and this is a project that I feel like is done under really good intent, right? As opposed to displacing 40 long-term families. The county bought it, and now we're figuring out what do we do with it. And some of that tension is, okay, well, if we want this to be sustainable at an affordable level for a long time, we need to put more there so that the expenses for this neighborhood can be shared across more people, because otherwise the 40 people who live there are going to be displaced anyway because of the cost. And so that's something that I really think about. And that's local. Those are folks who are retired or they're working in our community. And meanwhile, on the other side, then we have a Woody Creek Caucus where additional density is not part of their master plan. They're of the opinion that it violates their sense of rural character. And so what do you do there? You can't, for me, it was figuring out, like, I really advocated for more density than we landed on because I think we could do more there, and we have fields there that are great because they're flat, they're accessible. Others on our board wanted to preserve more of that rural character there. And so those are the things that I really think about, is try to take a holistic view of all of the issues, figure out where there's a balance, and move us forward, right? That's what I hope for and what I strive for is, I may not get everything I want out of a solution, but is the solution still serving the community? And that's okay. Like, that, I think, is a measured approach to trying to get a board of 5 who are not working in a consensus mode right now to still make progress, because otherwise I think we could be at a real deadlock. So that's how I work on some of this stuff, I'd say. But, I'm working on issues all around the county. Child care issues is really supporting people all over the county, but mostly workers who are working up valley, right? I'm also working on water protection issues over in the Crystal. I've been very happy to support open space projects around the county. So I really do have more of a holistic view. And that's not to say that I'm not, like, deeply sympathetic and of personal history with folks who are working in Pitkin County. I worked as a waitress for many years on the mall, trying to save money to live here and to buy a place in Apsha and save up our down payment and all of that. I worked as a private caterer at times. My husband's in the service industry, and over our 10-year relationship, have watched him move around to different jobs, and the satisfaction and the challenge that has come with that for him. So on a daily basis, I feel like I have a pulse of what is going on, and also recognizing that we have 25% of the people who live in Pitkin County that do not make enough to live. They do not make enough to live on. That's not okay. And so if I'm posed with a choice of, like, what am I going to favor, I'm always going to lean towards, like, how do I lessen the burden on the people who are shouldering the most burden. So that's kind of how I make decisions.
Thank you. We have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to go to another big issue for our workforce and our community overall, which is mental health. Pitkin County does have a public health department and some social services. There's not a lot of movement on those metrics in community surveys, in suicide stats, and so I'm wondering from each of you, are there things the county is working on in that sphere that are working that you've noticed, and are there things that you would fund to make sure there are improvements? Kelly, I'll start with you.
Great, thank you. Yeah. I've been really proud to have supported our PACT program, and this is the program where we have a mental health counselor who responds to sheriff's department calls, and they have been able to, I think, diffuse issues, get people connected with care for substance abuse and mental health. It's helped lower the amount of folks who've been charged in our jail. So I think that I'm really proud of that, and I have advocated for additional funding from the state, which has been successful. So want to see that program keep going. We've been able to extend it beyond a pilot program. We've also placed mental health counselors in the schools and had funded that, and that's been, to me, something really important to do. And particularly, I think we need to do more of that. Are you telling me to move my hair?
No, I have an itch.
To do more of that, particularly out of the pandemic, because the kids are not okay, and I want us to do more. I would like us to see how we can better support our mental health providers to provide more and more affordable care. I have friends who are mental health, counselors, and they are maxed out, and they can take whatever rate they want, and they don't have to take insurance. And I think there's some ideas out there. Well, what if we pooled a medical insurance billing person who could work with the mental health care providers, so that they wouldn't have to individually take that on as a sole proprietor, but that could allow them to expand their services. Those are the type of things that I want to see do more.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Erin, you previously have been a deputy, so you might have some insight into that PACT program or any other programs from the county that are going well or that need some assistance.
I agree. I think PACT is a great idea. I feel like, from my experiences, Pitkin County, we are a bit ahead of the game when it comes to mental health. I worked with other counties in other towns in the valley, and we're all on board, but I feel like Pitkin County, we were really serious about mental health as deputies. You had the option when I started to call Mind Springs or Hope Center, whoever could get someone there first. And then the county went into contract with Mind Springs.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, I would still call Hope Center sometimes, based on ready, quick response. I think, I haven't seen a report. I know at one point Pitkin County was one of the highest in the nation for suicide rate. From personal, just people I know, I feel like maybe it's gone down a little, but I'm not going to say that specifically.
Such a hard thing to measure.
Yeah, it's very hard to measure, but I think of, outside of what the county and government are offering, we're so lucky because we also have Aspen Strong. So if you don't have money, to go, you just call Christina at Aspen Strong. She's going to get the ball rolling, and they're going to find someone for you to talk to. And we have Triad amongst our first responders in this valley, which is huge. I know at the fire department, they will actually provide you 5 one-hour sessions a year on the department, and then if you need more, it's a simple Nikki, I need more, and I've never heard them say no to anyone. So I think if we just all continue working with each other, we're moving in the right direction for mental health. It's very sad, mental health, and I think she is very correct that we need to pay a lot of attention to our young people. But we have Cam, our SRO up there, Cam. He came from a Child's Advocate program in Glenwood, so he had all this crazy knowledge of how to do it. Before him was Huff. I know Huff saved lives personally. He was very deep involved in the mental health aspects, and you see some of the people whose lives I was involved with as a deputy, I'm still in touch with, some of the survivors. So I think mental health in this valley, we all are very good about supporting each other, and I think the county is moving in the right direction as far as that goes.
Kelly, I was looking through campaign finance reports, and you filed all of yours, but there's 0 and 0. You haven't taken in money. You haven't spent money.
Well, you'll have to look tomorrow.
Okay. Is there something behind that up to date? Was that intentional?
No, it wasn't intentional. I just think I had been focused on like the job of county commissioner, and it was, slow to transition to campaign mode. So I'm full on in campaign mode now, and I also tend to just do a lot by myself. But yeah, I'm going door to door and purchasing ads, and I have a lot of great endorsements, and I'm waiting to hear about some other endorsements that I would be honored to be affiliated with. So, yeah, it's going well now. 3 weeks to go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Erin, what committees would you be interested in serving on? As a county commissioner, you also are placed in all these other arms. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about where you'd like to be?
Wherever they need me. I like to learn different things. I don't think anyone, when they go into the job of county commissioner, can say, I have experience as a commissioner, because until you are a commissioner or a councilman, what do you have to prepare for that, other than serving on other boards and jobs you've had along the way? So I'm open to anything, to be honest. Like, I want to give my input everywhere. Obviously, housing, we don't need to beat that with a stick, but anywhere they want. I'm not awesome at writing, like, grants and stuff, but I'm very good at learning. And I like learning, and I'm a sponge to learn new things in the county and community that I can be involved in and just give my knowledge and give my experience to maybe change and help. So I wish I could give a more specific answer, but I'm really not picky about where I'm needed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think then we'll close with taking a look at that broader strategic plan from Pitkin County. Some final thoughts just on where we are in achieving those goals, and also any places that we're missing the mark. So, Erin, I'll start with you.
Okay. I think I love living in Pitkin County. We're so lucky. The infrastructure here is awesome. The community is awesome. I don't think there's a ton of room for improvement anymore, other than obviously the housing and the daycare and the keeping the retention of locals, keeping as many new to old school locals here. As many people that want to be part of this community, I want to find a way to help them stay here. It's obviously not realistic. I think Kelly mentioned earlier, we're not going to get 8,000 workers living up here, but if we could get 800, more right here in this community, giving back. And when you live here, you shop here, you eat here. When there's restaurants you can go to, us locals feed the community, which feeds the tourism. And people didn't come to Aspen just for skiing. Aspen became awesome because of the community and us people. So I just want to keep pushing that forward. I am so not a politician. This is going to be very new to me if I win. I'm just a normal local that's very dedicated to my community, that wants to just try to make a difference, try to be one of those pioneers of housing. I just want to try. I just want the chance for a normal one of us to affect the outcome of our future, basically.
Kelly, looking at those goals in the strategic plan from Pitkin County, are there places where we're missing the mark? Are there places where we're excelling?
Sure. Yeah, I guess what comes to mind for me is that, there were things that were hard before the pandemic that have been just emphasized because of the pandemic. So when I think about livable and supportive community, I'm really thinking about the folks who are that 25% of our population who cannot afford to live here. They are making very real decisions about, do I pay car insurance, or do I take my kid to the dentist? And these are things that I don't think that Pitkin County residents should have to be forced to reckon with. And so I would like to see us do more as far as supporting people. And, that turns into housing, that turns into childcare, that turns into availability of transit. And all of these things, I think, actually support the business community better as well, because, the business community relies on these people and needs them to be healthy and able to show up to work too. And so that's what keeps me kind of awake at night. And those are the things that, the programs that I think about. I additionally want to protect what makes this place really special. That's why I'm working on trying to protect the Crystal River. That's why fire mitigation has been something that the county has been getting more and more involved with. That's why slow growth is an important topic, because when I look 50 years down the road, I don't want to see us have lost ground on these treasures that make this place an extraordinary place to live. And I also want to be able to boost people up so that they can continue to live here healthfully. So that's where I think we need to do better.
I do also want to give you both a chance to comment on anything. If you're jealous of a question I asked your opponent or want to address something that didn't come up as it relates to the business community or that's important to your campaign. And this time I'll start with you, Kelly.
Yeah, I just would like to highlight that, I know that the pandemic was really hard for the business community as well, especially at the very beginning, where there was just so much unknown and so much fear, and, people had to close their doors. We shut down, and then tried to figure out creative ways, like can we stay open in some way or another? And so, I was not on the public health board, so I don't feel like I had necessarily a direct decision-making role, but I looked for ways to support our community. And the ways that I did that was by advocating for funding from the state to our community to support us during that time, to have testing programs that employees could take advantage of for free, to have our cash assistance program where we made sure people were going to be able to pay their bills and not going to get kicked out of their rental housing or have their mortgages go into default. When we realized we had more CARES money than we needed for kind of the public health infrastructure, I advocated for grants for the business community. So that $25,000 small grant program was something that I really fought for. I saw other communities doing it, and I was like, Pitkin County needs to do this. So those are some things that I've been proud of. Even our tenants down in at Stubby's building, like we lowered their rents and gave some rent forgiveness to them to support them through that. So, we don't have a lot of business in the sense of commercial areas in the county, and we don't have a lot of necessarily direct connection to business owners and operators, but we are supporting the infrastructure to make our economy successful. And, that's something I'm committed to doing more.
Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah.
Erin, last word?
I sort of touched on it, but I want, and this is kind of hard to say at ACRA because I know your ACRA's whole thing is to promote Aspen. I just kind of want to see the locals' happiness and livability and reasonable prices. I want to see that highlighted for a bit instead of trying to get more tourists to come here and make the tourists happy, because if we're happy, they're happy, right? So I'd love to see the government in the next few years focus on the locals. Put us first, prioritize what the locals need. The second homeowners and the tourists are coming either way. They will come here. So I just want to put community first in any aspect that the county can. I want to work with the city, perhaps maybe subsidize some businesses, help them, not just post-pandemic. Like if they had a terrible year, maybe find a way to offer them a little reprieve. But yeah, put locals first. That's what I want to see.
Well, 2 clarifications about the Aspen Chamber Resort Association before we close. One, that sounds a lot like the destination management plan that marketing team is working on to prioritize locals, and that is very separate from the membership side of the organization, yes, of which I'm representing, which are those businesses that pay to become members and represented. So those are 2 very different branches of the organization, and we don't collect any lodging tax from county right now. So no marketing dollars were lost in Kelly's initiative to try and get that on the board. We only collect lodging tax within the city. Again, thank you so much to Erin Smiddy and Kelly McNicholas Kury, who are our candidates for Pitkin County Commissioner District 2, for joining us on Aspen Affairs this evening and answering those questions submitted by the business community. You can catch ACRA's full election forum, including ballot measures and the sheriff's race, online at grassrootstv.org or aspenchamber.org. I'm Alycin Bektesh. Good evening.